We have another bill at the desk. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 778, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to gambling, the fifth engrossment.
I call upon the author of the bill, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is the bill that legalizes sports betting in Minnesota. And let's be clear from the outset that sports betting is already happening in Minnesota. We have a robust black market here. People just use shady websites, digital workarounds, and other means to place bets. What this bill is about is creating a legal marketplace that will displace that black market, and in doing so, provide consumer protection, ensure the integrity of the game, and limit money laundering and other illicit activity. In 2018, the Supreme Court struck down long-standing federal law prohibiting sports betting in states other than Nevada and New Jersey. And since then, over 30 states have legalized sports betting. All of Minnesota's neighbors, including Canada, have legal sports betting. This is an idea whose time has come. Having said that, it's important that we get this right. This will be the biggest change to our state's gambling laws in at least 30 years. And so, in the interim, I engaged with every stakeholder I could. I traveled the state, from the Red Lake Nation in northwestern Minnesota to sports data companies located in downtown Minneapolis, listening and trying to develop a Minnesota-specific model for legal sports betting. During this process, I consulted with all 11 of the tribal nations located in Minnesota, along with our professional sports teams, the University of Minnesota, sports betting companies, and experts on problem gaming. I also examined the law in the states that have legal sports betting and even took a field trip to Iowa. The product of all of this work is the bill that's before you today. The bill includes both brick-and-mortar sports betting at tribal casinos, as well as statewide mobile sports betting operated by the tribes in partnership with commercial operators. To put that in plain terms, if this bill passes, Minnesotans will be able to visit sports betting lounges at casinos all across Minnesota, and they'll also be able to wager on sports on their smartphones anywhere in the state. We would tax mobile sports betting at a level consistent or below states around the country. The money generated from this tax would be dedicated to 3 sources. First, regulations and consumer protections necessary to make sure that sports betting is fair and doesn't influence what's happening on the field, particularly at the amateur level. Second, 50% of the tax revenue generated will be used to address problem gaming. And we should be honest here, many people can gamble without issue, most people, but for a small subset, it is a real problem. And we would devote more resources than ever before to confronting this problem. It would be the largest investment by far in combating problem gaming in any state in the country. Finally, 50% of the remaining tax revenue raised would go to funding youth sports and other youth programming around the states, but with particular emphasis on communities experiencing a high rate of juvenile crime. Juvenile crime is at unacceptable levels across Minnesota, and while there's no single cause or single solution, we know that when kids are playing sports, they're not getting into trouble doing other things. So it's a good bill, members. I know we have a number of amendments, but before that, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage you to recognize my co-author on the bill, Representative Garofalo, who I want to thank for his tremendous work on this bill in prior years as well as this year. It's been a good partnership.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you. Before I begin discussing this bill, I want to give a shout out. I want to thank everyone last night for allowing me to participate in the first annual I-90 tornado drill that took place at the St. Paul State Stadium. So thank you to those organizers who did that. Members, 4 long years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the federal ban on sports gambling. This provides us an opportunity to have a safe and regulated market in the state of Minnesota. By voting on today's bill, it gives us the opportunity, number 1, to help dramatically reduce the size and scope of the existing black market. Number 2, by providing Minnesotans with consumer protections that they currently lack in the offshore sports books, as well as the current black market. And third and finally, it expands resources that are available, desperately needed resources, to expand treatment for gambling addiction programs. I look forward to a thoughtful debate today and encourage members' participation in this dialogue. Thank you.
There are amendments at the desk. The clerk will report the amendments.
Stevenson moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth engrossment. The amendment is coded A14.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment makes a couple of clarifying changes. First of all, it makes clear that this bill does not impact the ability of our charities to engage in sports-themed tip boards, as they are legally currently able to do. We want to make that very clear that this bill is not about charitable gaming. It's about legal sports betting. Second, it creates a 3-hour waiting period after money is deposited in an account before it can be wagered. This is meant to give a brief pause to try and address some of the problem gaming concerns that we discussed. Finally, it makes some changes to the exclusion list to allow people to place themselves on it if they choose to do so. I ask for a yes vote.
Discussion to the A14 amendment. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
AICA moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth and gross one as amended. The amendment is coded A20.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the representative from Hennepin, Representative Acom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I will say I am not a big gambler, and so my reason for putting forward this amendment today is really to try to protect those people that struggle with gambling. And so my amendment is to ensure that apps on our phone can't push notifications to people and that they have to kind of go to the app in order to participate in the activity. And I think we all know with social media and with all the different apps we have on our phones, when they're pushing things at us, we often will go look at it and go participate. And so for a person who's struggling with addiction, with gambling, that kind of push will only make it that more challenging. The only exception is to allow the notification if there's fraudulent behavior on their account. And I think that's just a safeguard that makes sense. But members, I encourage you to support the amendment to not allow push notifications for the app for sports betting. Thank you.
Discussion to the A20 amendment. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The amendment prevails and, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Next amendment at the desk. Will the Chief Clerk please report the amendments?
Hornstein moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth and gross one as amended. The amendment is coded A23.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. The A23 amendment is part of a series of amendments from myself, Representative Acom, Representative Bonner, Representative Kosnick, that do address this issue of problem gambling, compulsive gambling, that add to the provisions that Representative Stevenson already discussed. And so this particular amendment addresses the fact that the manifold problems, mental health issues, addiction issues that we see with compulsive gambling not only impact the individual who is experiencing those issues and challenges, but also the family members. And so what this amendment does is it extends to 60 hours a gambling treatment program for those affected and impacted individuals. Right now it stands at 12 hours. So this is very, very important, and I think will go a long way in helping entire families address this issue, because it does not only affect the individual compulsive gambler, and I ask for your support.
Discussion to the A23 amendment. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Bonner moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A25.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment is pretty straightforward. It allows the commissioner to do some additional rulemaking to provide some additional protections and limitations on this bill. I want to thank some other members of the House, as well as Representative Acom in particular, as well as Representative Hornstein, for working together and sort of enabling us to make this bill even just a little bit better. The first piece that it does is it talks about ads, particularly making sure that we are not targeting folks who are under the age of 21. It also has the ability to do some rulemaking around the frequency of those ads, particularly with regards to time, manner, and place. The second piece actually allows for rulemaking to limit the addictive properties of the applications with things like timeouts or waiting periods in specific, or specific features within the app that may have addictive properties to allow them to look into those options. And the last is something that does some limitations around when problem gaming has been identified. We know that there are really addictive properties that can be identified through algorithms and monitoring within those applications. We know that technology exists as a technology professional myself. And this puts some protections in place, or would allow them to put protections in place to be able to pause or suspend participation in the event that those patterns are identified. And with that, I would ask for a green vote.
Discussion to the A25 amendments. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Kosnick moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A21.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Kosnick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Without the addition of the previous amendments, this bill currently fails to address the impact of sports betting will have on communities of color, low-income communities, and youth. This amendment is a first step to place some guardrails to limit the targeting of young people in advertising as it relates to sports betting. I request for your support.
Discussion to the A21 amendment. I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Kosnick, for this amendment, which makes a good bill better. I ask members for a green vote.
Further discussion. Representative Kosnick.
Thank you again. I just wanted to share with members, legalized sports betting will cater to the whims and the privileges of a few at the expense of youth and vulnerable among us who will be preyed upon by this expanded form of gambling. The 2020 study, Gambling in Minnesota, by the Wilder Research for the Minnesota Department of Human Services, states that 27% of adults know someone whose gambling may be causing them financial difficulties, impacting their physical or emotional health, and damaging their personal, family, work relationships. 27% of adults know somebody that has problem gambling. That's more than 1 in 4 people, even here in this chamber. Further, another study shows that sports wagering is popular among adolescents worldwide. In fact, based on grade level, younger adolescents were more likely to gamble on sports and report problems compared to older youth. So if we pass sports gambling in this state, this amendment will help provide some necessary, just first guardrail steps to help protect the targeting of our youth and adults. And if Minnesota does sports betting, we can't just roll the dice and hope for the best. We have to get this right the first time. And so we need to have, continue to have more serious discussion on problem gambling and other concerns in this bill but the most pressing concern is problem gambling, and so I would request your support. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the A21 amendment say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. We have another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Rasmussen moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A24.
I recognize the member from Ottertail, Representative Rasmussen. And Representative Rasmussen, I see you have an amendment to the amendment as well.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment to the amendment.
Okay, let's move that. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Rasmussen is moving to amend his amendment to House File Number 778, the fifth and Grossman as amended. The amendment to the amendment is coded A29.
To the author of the amendment to the amendment, Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment to the amendment corrects a drafting error and will get the underlying amendment in the shape that I would like to discuss it in, so I'd respectfully ask for member support.
Discussion to the amendment to the amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The motion is adopted and the amendment to the amendment, wait a minute, let's try that again. The motion prevails and the amendment to the amendment is adopted. To the amendment, Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mobile sports betting represents a major expansion of gambling here in the state of Minnesota. And currently the bill before the House disconnects mobile sports betting from any brick and mortar casinos and the protections that on-premise gaming currently has and provides. My amendment would require registration, deposits, withdrawals be made at a brick and mortar tribal casino for online and mobile sports betting. This amendment would only impact the account management aspects of depositing, withdrawing, and establishing an account, and does not impact the sports betting frequency, time, or manner on which sports betting would be conducted under this bill. Mr. Speaker and members, I believe that this is a reasonable safeguard to put in this bill. It would make sure that individuals, for example, if they have fully depleted their account, that there would be natural friction between when they would be depositing more money to gambling and would give them time to consider if that's something that they want to do versus impulsively being able to deposit money just on their mobile device. It's important, Mr. Speaker and members, that we think about more protections that we can have if we look to legalize sports gambling as a state. For example, one study showed that for online sports betting, 16% of those gamblers who engage in online sports betting met the clinical criteria for a gambling disorder. This is something we have to take seriously and we have to look at. Many states that have legalized sports betting have on-premise only, including the majority of the surrounding states around Minnesota. In addition, Nevada, which has had extensive experience with sports betting, has an in-person registration requirement. So the amendment before the House represents a balanced approach to legalizing sports betting that would allow participants time to consider if they want to deposit, withdraw, and how they want to engage in sports betting. So I would ask for member support for this reasonable protection that will provide greater protections for Minnesotans who do engage in legalized sports betting under this bill. Thank you.
Discussion to the A24 amendment. I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Rasmussen, for your thoughtful amendment. I certainly share your concern about problem gaming, and I agree with the idea that creating friction between the time of deposit and the wager is a good way to interrupt that, and that's what we did in the first amendment that we adopted today when we put a 3-hour delay between a deposit and a wager. Unfortunately, this amendment, I have to ask members to vote no on. Other states have attempted this approach, found it unworkable, and rejected it. Secondly, it creates a disadvantage for rural operators, rural casinos, relative to more metro-focused operators and casinos. We want this to benefit people all around the state, and so I would ask members to vote no on the amendment.
Further discussion. Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just remind members that many states that have looked to legalize sports betting have on-premise only sports betting, and they have not looked at doing mobile. Mobile is something that we could always pursue in the future, but the bill today represents a very full, very broad expansion of gambling here in the state of Minnesota. And once we take this move, it'll be very difficult to put additional protections in place. And for the states that have removed different in-person restrictions, that's oftentimes been driven by lower revenue estimates than what they were hoping for, not necessarily looking out to protect and limit problem gambling. So I would ask for members' support on the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
O'Driscoll moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A26.
I recognize the member from Stearns, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. In the bill today before us, there's a provision that talks about youth sports grants that would go out to different communities and different counties throughout the state of Minnesota. And I have offered an amendment in the committee to dedicate 50% of those funds to the 80 counties that are outside of the 7-county metro area, and leaving the other 50% in the 7-county metro area. And in the committee, this particular provision was not obviously taken, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about this amendment on the floor today. And what I'm going to ask members to do is to consider an important distribution of these funds. And I was wondering if the bill author could yield to a question, please.
He will yield. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Stevenson, in committee when we talked about this, you had indicated that this is something that you might want to take under advisement about how that ratio and that formula may look, and that there might be some revisions. Seeing nothing in the bill, could you share with me and the other members what you might be thinking about as a distribution or an allocation of that?
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. The bill, as it's drafted now, has the allocation focused on trying to reduce levels of juvenile crime, and so the money is targeted at communities experiencing a high level of juvenile crime. I think that that's the appropriate focus, which is why we didn't make a change, but I appreciate the thought.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Stevenson for your response. But again, we've got an awful lot of money that's coming from this, and it will come from all parts of the state. And it would be seeming to me to be a little bit more of an appropriate way of allocating these funds to do it on a 50-50. I mean, it's almost 10 to 1 when we're looking at 80 counties versus 7 counties on here. Members, I would encourage a green vote on the A26 amendment.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the A26 amendment say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. We have one last amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please report the amendment?
O'Driscoll moves to amend House File Number 778, the fifth engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A27.
To the author of the amendment, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. If you've been around this legislature for any time at all and dealing with gaming issues, you know that many of your communities have VFWs and Legion clubs and maybe a sports group, a baseball association or hockey association that has a gaming license for charitable gaming. And they may be located at some of your bars and restaurants or other places where people gather in your communities. And the interesting part about that, when I have conversations with people in my district on this, is they're absolutely dumbfounded to find out that when they, the local hockey association or the VFW, when they're doing those great things in the community, that they have to file a tax return with the state of Minnesota. And it's not a tax return like you and I file, where we would have a deduction of certain expenses. It's literally revenues times tax rate, send the check to the Minnesota Department of Revenue. And my point for bringing this forward is we've been working as a body to try to eliminate these taxes on these organizations over the years. I just want to remind members that if the bill before us today becomes law, it doesn't mean that there's going to be more people out there who are going to be engaging in gaming. Yeah, there might be a marginal increase. It's going to be a shift from those who are in gaming activities or betting activities to shift their money maybe away from your local Legion clubs or your youth hockey associations or the other good things that are being done in your community. And that's going to be shifted away, as the bill says, to another group of folks. And I think what's going to happen is the revenues are going to be less coming in. And that means that they're still going to have to be paying taxes unless things will be done in our communities that this charitable gaming is doing right now. And so, unfortunately, the bill does not deal with or address that issue as far as taxation is concerned. And so I bring this amendment forward to raise the question that this is a deficiency that I find in this bill. That, again, if we grow our opportunities, we don't necessarily grow our sources of revenue, and it's going to have a consequential impact. Not only that, we've also seen it as a consequential impact on other communities or other states that have broadened gaming. You don't have to look far other than our southern border to the state of Iowa, where they have seen pari-mutuel betting taking a revenue hit as a result of broadening gaming. I tend to believe that this is probably going to be a little bit out of order, and we know what the majority does when they don't like something that is out of order. I will save you the effort this afternoon, and I will withdraw the amendment, but I thought it was very important for us to be able to have that discussion. Unless, of course, I saw the majority leader kind of palpitate a little bit. Maybe there's a shot at that. No. You're out of order. Mr. Speaker, I will withdraw the amendment. Thank you.
The A27 amendment has been withdrawn. We have no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 778, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. All right, first on my list, I have Representative Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Yeah, I rise in opposition to the bill. Just my experience as far as expanding gambling and gambling in general, I've seen where family members have stolen from their own children to go gambling. I've seen family situations where they didn't pay the electric bill and they spent it on gambling instead. In my district, we had one longtime business owner, married, had young children. He created huge debts with gambling. And one day he went to work and he killed himself. So when you see those types of exhaust, and of course I did jail ministry and we've seen some of the consequences there too. Again, I've had the arguments, well, we got cars, we got car accidents, we got, food, we got people addicted to certain types of food that's negative for them. But this is, food and cars are more of a necessity. Gambling is simply a want or desire versus a need. So the other thing is economically. Is it a plus or negative as far as our society is concerned? Well, the overwhelming evidence shows it's a negative. Because gambling, somebody has to lose for you to win. Okay? excellent economics, we all win. We grow the pie, and we can have more participants in the process. So again, the more you expand gambling, the more problems, and we've heard from people trying to put safeguards in there. And I'm all for voting for more money to address some of the gambling problems, but expanding gambling is not a way to address the problem. So, you know, I have to come down on the side of some of the consequences I've seen in people's lives. And remember, once you're addicted to something, you lose the ability to make a decision, all right? And you're compelled to do it. And that brings you into deep problems on something that is not a necessity. I think, if I remember right, I'm old enough to remember that we had vice squads. And one of the things, you know, police vice squads did was it was because gambling was illegal. So again, the more we legalize this and similar other things that actually don't grow our economy and are a benefit to all of us, the more problems we're going to get, and the more government spending that seems to be demanded. So members, I'd encourage you to vote red on this bill. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we really should legalize sports betting in Minnesota. States surrounding us have already done it. But this bill needs a lot of work. Right now, it gives the tribes exclusive control over the mobile gaming aspect. And the tribes certainly should be included in this bill. They should have a serious say. But this leaves out racetracks, for example. In Iowa, when they legalized sports betting, the horse racetracks lost around 40% of their revenue. And in Minnesota, horse racetracks have around $500 million in economic impact. If they lost that revenue, they would be doomed. And they should have some say. We want to keep it tight. We want to make sure we know who's doing it. But we need to make sure that places like Running Aces can operate in the mobile space as well. And the way this is taxed, well, is good. 10% rate. I think the less tax we do, the better on most things. At the same time, we're thinking about doing a 10% tax rate on sports betting. We tax charitable gambling at over 36% plus a 9% flat, or 8.5% flat tax. That is insane. And all that money, rather than going to the profit of a corporation or whatnot, goes into our communities. For example, the Blaine Hockey Association has a total revenue of $1.4 million, and they have to pay 36% plus 9% taxes. So, things that would make this bill significantly better. One, make sure racetracks like Running Aces are included in the mobile gaming aspect. They have to be, or they're doomed. Just like if the tribal casinos weren't included in the mobile gaming aspects, their big concern is, well, people will gamble at home on their phones and not come into the casino and cost them serious money. Well, that applies to other organizations too, and we should make sure this bill is fair. And I think what would make it a whole lot more popular, I mean, in this room and across the state, is if we coupled charitable gaming taxes at the same rate as sports betting. I think we all, I mean, I would be surprised if somebody here disagreed with that. And if they did, I bet you they wouldn't say it out loud. So this bill needs a lot of work. Let's help charitable gaming, legalize sports betting, but make sure it's done fairly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to be brief on this here. Sports betting and sports gambling is definitely an issue that's at the front of mind for a lot of Minnesotans. I have a lot of my friends who reach out to me quite often to say, when are you going to get that passed? And, you know, I say there's a bill in the process. But, you know, Representative Stevenson said it best today. It's important we get this issue right. Members, this bill is not getting it right. This is a rushed bill that has a lot of provisions, that has a lot of people concerned. There's not peace in the Valley. Otherwise, the Senate chamber across the hall would have the same bill drawn up ready to go, and they don't. So it's important that if we're going to get this done, we do it the right way. And this is the wrong way to do it, unfortunately. So I look forward to the conversation continuing on sports betting and sports gambling, and I look forward to us getting it done right. And instead of talking about this today, I wish we would be talking more about the other issues at hand for Minnesotans right now. And I know those come to mind more often than sports betting. So for that reason today, I am a no, but I look forward to the day that we have a real sports betting bill in front of this chamber that we can vote on together. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Douglas, Representative Franzen. How about Representative Scott? Then we're at Garofalo. Oh. Representative Scott, are you with us remotely? Representative Scott. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm here now, sorry.
Is that Representative Scott?
This is Representative Scott.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back to
yes, the
Scott.
member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just wondering, I had some concerns with the bill, and I'm wondering if the bill's author would yield to some questions.
He will yield. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm referring to a couple of different sections of the bill. The first one is on page 18. It's section 2 through 14. It's the exclusion list and the prohibition on wagering. And I'm wondering, there's this list that's going to be created, and I'm wondering who besides the commissioner will have access to the list that's being made with some really kind of personal information here.
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Scott. On line 18.11 of the fifth engrossment, paragraph B, it indicates that the list is private data and individuals. It's defined in section 13.02 subdivision 2, and that the commissioner is permitted to share the information with mobile sports betting operators as needed to prevent people from placing wagers. That seems to be a critical sharing of data because otherwise the operators wouldn't know who to exclude.
Representative Scott.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so if you would continue to yield. Representative Stevenson, I didn't hear an answer in there as to who is going to have access to this besides the commissioner and these operators. Is it going to be role-based access at the with the commissioner's office? That's not specified here. If it's going to be role-based access, which it really should be. So do you have, I guess, do you have a more specific answer on who exactly is going to have access to this? Is it everybody in the commissioner's office? Is it everybody at these operators' offices?
Representative Scott, are you asking Representative Stevenson to yield?
I am.
Representative Stevenson.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Scott. I will admit that I'm having a hard time hearing you here in the chamber and your question, but I think you were asking me if I had any more information about who would be able to access this information, and I don't know how to answer that question beyond telling you that the data is private. It's signified as private in the bill. It's governed by section 30.02 subdivision 12 and can only be shared as needed with the operators in order to prevent people on the exclusion list from placing sports betting wagers. I think I heard you ask if it could be shared with anybody in the operators. I would read this as no to that question because it says it can only be shared as needed to prevent persons from placing sports betting wagers. So for example, a custodian at the company has no role in preventing people from placing wagers, thus would have no need to see the data. Thus the plain language of the statute would prohibit them from having access to it.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the plain reading of this statute, if it should become law, is not what you're intending that phrase to mean, because we deal with this particular statute of Chapter 13 all the time, and we specify in there that the access to any of this sensitive information has to be role-based access. It has to be recorded in a log every time someone accesses that information, so that if there is a breach, that we have an audit trail to go back and find out who's responsible. My next question, if the author would continue to yield, Mr. Speaker, is will the people who call up and put their name on this list, or a guardian that puts a loved one's name on the list for their protection, will they be provided a Tennyson warning so that they are fully aware that their name is going on this list and that it will be shared?
Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Scott. And I will again admit that I couldn't, I'm having difficulty hearing you through the connection. I think your question was, will people be receiving Tennyson warnings if they are giving their name and data on this list? And I will admit that I'm not an expert on Tennyson warnings. I know that you are, so you probably could answer this question better than I could, except to say that, again, Chapter 13 is controlling how the data is used on the list.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So normally in a situation like this where someone is going to have their name put on a list, or that the government is going to keep certain information, they are provided a Tennyson warning, and that in any time that their data is going to be shared, whether it's from one government agency to another, or from one government agency to an outside entity, a Tennyson warning is provided so that the person whose information the government has is fully aware what is going to happen to their information. If the author would continue to yield, Mr. Speaker.
He will. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I apologize, I'm on my way down to the state convention here, so I know the connection may not be great, but Representative Stevenson, can a person have their name removed from this list? And if so, how would they do that?
Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Scott. We did, in the first amendment that was drafted accepted today, address that issue. And let me just pull up the amendment so that I can remind myself. But I recall that we adopted an amendment saying that people can put their names on the list for a specified period of time, and that their names are removed from the list upon conclusion of the time, that they can be further removed from the list before the specified time by providing proof of completion of a class approved by the Commission to address compulsive gambling. And that, Representative Scott and Mr. Speaker, is in the A14 amendment, lines 1.12 to 1.16.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that, Representative Stevenson, and I apologize for not knowing that ahead of time. But related to that, so the bill language says that that persons whose names have been submitted by mobile sports betting operators, mobile sports betting platform providers, et cetera. That's on item number 3 there on that same page. So how will a person know that their name has been put on a list?
Representative Scott, you're asking Representative Stevenson to yield?
Yes, I am, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Scott. The bill is silent on notification.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Stevenson. That's kind of what I thought. And, I know that I think Representative O'Neill has some kind of follow-up questions to this, but if you don't know that your name's on this list, first of all, you should know that, because anytime a government entity has information on you, you should know that it exists. And I think there are also some issues with potential penalties if another person places a bet on behalf of another person whose name might be on this list, and how would anyone know whose name is on that list in that circumstance? If the author would continue to yield, Mr. Speaker.
He will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Stevenson, on line 18.13, it says mobile sports betting operators as needed to prevent persons on the exclusion list from placing sports betting, that they can add people's names onto this list as needed. What are the criteria for being added to that list?
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Scott. I think you actually are referring to a different portion of the bill. The section that you referred to talks about the data sharing provisions that we already discussed. The provisions you're asking for is in a different section. Of course, we believe that mobile betting operators should have the ability to conduct their affairs as they need to, and deny a service if somebody is not adhering to the terms and conditions of their platform, and there could be a variety of other reasons that are not articulated in the bill.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So if Representative Stevenson would continue to yield.
Yep, he will.
Thank you. So just as a matter of clarification, I'm looking at line 18.11 through 18.13. This is still the section of the bill that deals with the exclusion list. It says the information contained on the list is private data on individuals as defined in 13.02 sub 12, except the commissioner is permitted to share the list with mobile sports betting operators as needed to prevent persons on the exclusion list from placing sports betting wagers. So what's the qualification for as needed? What will be the criteria that the commissioner will use to put somebody on that list and then share it?
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Scott. The section of the bill that is on 18.11 through 18.14 discusses that the information on the list is private, that it's controlled by Section 13, that the commissioner is permitted to share the list with mobile sports betting operators as needed to prevent persons on the exclusion list from placing sports betting wagers. The earlier portions of that section and subdivision discuss who can place the person on the list, and then it does say that the commissioner shall maintain the list. It does not discuss qualifications.
Representative Scott.
Okay, so members, what I was getting at there is it says as needed. So can the commissioner, what kind of proof are they going to have that someone needs to be on this list and then go and share it with these operators? That's what I'm trying to get at here, folks. If the author would continue to yield for a couple of other questions.
He will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Stevenson. I want to move now to lines 20.26 to 20.30. And we discussed this a little bit in Judiciary Committee when the bill was there. And it has to do with giving the Commissioner of Public Safety rulemaking authority to determine what the penalties for violations should be. And I'm just wondering why this is still left up and given this broad authority to the Commissioner of Public Safety rather than having the legislature itself define what those penalties should be. If you would yield.
Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Scott. I do recall you asking about this in committee. I said that I was open to changes here. If I missed it, you'll have to forgive me, but I don't recall receiving a subsequent communication from you with suggested language, I would have been open to that certainly on this point. I don't think it's a problem for the commissioner to develop the schedule. We entrust the commissioner with a lot of rulemaking authority in this bill, and I don't have a problem with them doing that. I understand that we may have a difference of opinion there. If you had offered an amendment in committee or on the floor or discussed it with me beforehand, I probably would have been open to that. But so when you ask why has it not changed, that's sort of my answer, is that I'm comfortable with the commissioner making these decisions.
Representative Scott.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't think it's my responsibility. It's not my bill to make these changes. It's yours, Representative Stevenson. And I'm just going out on a limb here, but I'm guessing that in other areas of statute that deal with gambling, that the legislature has set forth what those penalties will be. In Judiciary Committee this year, we heard a lot of bills that had to do with penalties. And the legislature was making those decisions. Right or wrong, the legislature was making those decisions. It wasn't being left up to an unelected bureaucrat to come up with those penalties. So instead, what we have here is this enormous rulemaking power by the Commissioner of Public Safety to determine penalties. And there's a multitude of reasons I won't be voting for this bill, but that's just one of them. We are the legislature. This is our responsibility to lay this stuff out. It's not the responsibility of a bureaucrat. That will end my question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for the little confusion. She was trying to call in, so I appreciate your indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Stevenson would yield for yet a couple of my questions.
He will yield. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, as Representative Scott just pointed out, the person that they themselves are on the list may or may not know that they are on the list, because the bill is silent about it's private, right? So I should have that information, but we don't know if the commissioner is actually going to tell the person that they are now on the list. And here's where it gets really problematic, and I'm wondering if you could help me out, the connection here, because you have an entire list of new criminal penalties for someone that places a bet for someone else who's on the list. Now, that someone else who's on the list may or may not know they're even on the list, because in your bill you don't tell them that they're on the list. But we have misdemeanor charges, we have gross misdemeanor, and we even have felony. And let me just tell you how much that is. For the gross misdemeanor, it's if I place a bet for somebody between $500 and $1,000 who's on the list. Now, that person may or may not know they're on the list. And for a felony, it's between $1,000 and $5,000. So if I place a $1,000 bet for someone that's on the list, that could be a felony that could be up to 2 years in prison. So, Representative Stevenson, can you help me understand how does that work when the person themselves may not even know that they're on this list, and another third party who may place a bet for them they're now a criminal because they've placed a bet for someone who doesn't even know they're on the list? Can you help me understand how that works, Representative Stevenson?
Representative Stevenson.
Yeah, so Mr. Speaker and Representative O'Neill, generally, as you know, with your experience in criminal law, you have to prove both an actus reus and a mens rea when you're proving an offense. You have to prove both criminal conduct and mens rea, a guilty mind. If a person does not know that they are on the list and thus place a wager, they would lack the mens rea to commit the crime and thus would not be guilty.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Stevenson. Well, I think there's some holes in this bill, because I think if you're on the list and the data is private, so there's nowhere that I can go to look at the list because it's private data under Chapter 12, right? Chapter 13, you said it's private. So I, as a private citizen, cannot go look at a list anywhere to find out if I am on the list. And it could be the commissioner that puts me on, it could be a third party that puts me on, it could be the sports betting facility that puts me on, but I won't know I'm on the list. There's a big hole here. So, I don't know. Maybe you have an idea of how we can remedy that. You don't have notice to a person that's now on the list. You don't have that in the bill. I understand that, what you just described about the criminal side of it. But the plain reading of the language says, I am now a criminal. If I place a bet of $1,000, I am now committing a felony for someone who's on the list. So I hope that you take a look at this. We've already done our amendments for the day. We're going to be passing this off the floor, presumably. Maybe, maybe not. But this has got some serious, serious issues with penalties that are huge. Representative Stevenson, a felony is a really big deal. So it literally says if I place a bet for someone else who's on the list between $1,000 and $5,000, that is a felony. A felony, guys. I don't even know what else to say. This has got issues. So I hope that you work on this going forward. Maybe Representative Stevenson, you want to lay this bill on the table and take a closer look at it. We've got plenty of time to fix it. Listen, I've been in all kinds of rooms and all kinds of times fixing bills at the last minute. So maybe you'd like to lay the bill on the table and work on it some more. But there's some serious problems with this bill, Representative Stevenson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the representative from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Mr. Speaker and members, as we debate this bill today, I want to remind you that moms are unable to find formula for their children. They're unable to find it on the shelves because the Biden administration is funneling it to illegal immigrants. And did you know that what Jen Psaki's advice was when moms are looking for formula? She told the press pool today, go call your doctor and see what your doctor can do for you. Well, what's a doctor going to do for moms to find formula? There's also a fertilizer shortage. And if you can get fertilizer, it is cost prohibitive for many of our farmers out there.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
What order of business are we on right now?
Well, let's see. We are on third reading of House File 778. Representative Franzen.
All right, so back to the food shortage issue, or the fertilizer issue. Fertilizer shortages lead to food shortages. And there is a lot of talk about a global famine that is going to be happening due to this situation. This body is fiddling with this bill while Minnesota is burning. Democrats have relegated energy policies to the bidding of Klaus Schwab and his merry band of globalists, while China profits from the Democrats' green energy policies. As we speak, the regional grid operator, the Mid-Continent Independent Systems Operator, MISO, has declared a max gen warning. This means that they are running out of reliable power plants to turn on, and that they may have to start telling large electricity users, like our manufacturers and miners, to shut down to keep the lights on for everyone else. Our businesses cannot compete in a global economy with electric grid that is dependent on the weather. We need the reliable, affordable energy that our coal, natural gas, and nuclear plants provide. Many members of this body pretend to think climate change is an existential crisis, but they won't even talk about nuclear power, which is the only reliable source of electricity that doesn't emit greenhouse gases. Instead, we're talking about a gambling bill today. This is unserious and childish. The problems on this grid are projected to get worse this summer, and many of you are laughing and rolling your eyes over there. This is not a funny situation. This is real, and it's going to be affecting each and every one of our constituents this summer while we are discussing a gambling bill today on the House floor. MISO admits they probably won't have enough reliable power plants online to meet the summer peak demand, plus their safety net. This means we could be facing rolling blackouts this summer because we keep building unreliable energy sources like wind and solar, which uses slave labor in China, by the way, and closing down our coal plants. But we're discussing a gambling bill today on the House floor. The middle class is being squeezed to death. There has been zero appetite by the Minnesota House Democrats to enact permanent tax relief.
Yes, please identify yourself.
Mr. Speaker. Tina Liebling.
Please proceed.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I don't have my Masons in front of me, but there is a rule about speaking off the point, and this is definitely off the point. Members do not get to pick the topic on which they want to speak and just speak about any old thing. Ask you to find my point of order well taken.
Advice, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to remind the body that debate must be confined to the question before the body. Representative Franzen.
Thank you. We are talking about a gambling bill, and that it's inappropriate for the House floor today. Our middle class is being squeezed to death. They're unable to afford the gas to put into their car. Have you looked at the gas prices these days? We're not addressing that. The best example that I have from energy is saying that, that the individuals, if they apply for weatherization for their homes, they can save up to $200. Well, thanks a lot, because $200 is not going to go very far in this Biden-Walz economy. We should be discussing permanent tax relief on this House floor, putting money into the hands of our constituents who desperately need it. Things are only going to get worse, but we're discussing a gambling bill on the House floor that's probably going to go nowhere. If you can't tell yet, I will be voting no on this bill. This is not a time to be discussing a gambling bill that is going to take more money out of the pockets of our hardworking citizens, and we can't even have the real discussions, as I was interrupted, 2-3 times on the House floor for discussing the real issues facing Minnesota. So shame on you.
Okay, let's see. To the member from Anoka, Representative Barr. Representative Barr. All right. To the member from Wright, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe it was an amendment earlier, Representative Aiken's amendment. And if I'm wrong, in regards to limiting the push notifications on mobile phones, if I'm wrong on who that author was, then I would ask the chief author of the bill to yield, but I would ask Representative Aiken to yield if my memory serves correctly.
Representative Lucero, can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
I am inquiring if Representative Aiken can yield.
She will yield. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Aiken. Were you the chief author, or were you the author of the amendment in regard to the mobile phone push notification prohibitions?
Representative Aiken.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Lucero, I did offer that amendment.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Aiken. I couldn't get my hand up fast enough when that amendment was offered. So I just wanted to ask you one or two questions now. And they are in regards to the notification prohibition on mobile phones. I presume that's going to be Minnesotans, but I'm just wondering if you can please clarify the logistics of how that's going to work in terms of, is it a Minnesotan with the software installed who's in Minnesota, or could it be a non-resident of Minnesota who has the software installed? Or if it is a Minnesota resident who's traveling outside the boundaries of Minnesota, I'm just seeking clarification on the logistics of how that prohibition is going to work.
Representative Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Lucero, the amendment is targeted toward Minnesotans who will be participating in sports betting and using the app. And so it will be Minnesotans who have the app, and it will prevent notifications from being pushed forward to try and limit the problem gambling issue that occurs for some folks.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, and if she would yield for another question.
She will yield. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and so thank you for that. What I'm wondering, though, is the logistics on how is the app going to know that it is a Minnesotan? So if it's on the mobile phone of a Minnesotan who's outside the boundaries of Minnesota, maybe they're visiting Iowa, and maybe, I do not know the intricacies of these apps, can that same app be used for sports betting in Iowa, for example? Or if a Minnesotan is using their friend's phone who happens to live in California, how is the app going to know that it is a Minnesotan using the app?
Representative Acom.
So, Representative Lucero, when a person registers for the app in order to participate in the mobile device application for sports betting, their address and information would be collected at that time, and it could be used to determine that they do in fact live in Minnesota so that we can participate and prevent the notifications from being pushed.
Representative Lucero.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just one more question, if she would yield.
She will yield. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, so if the app is dependent upon an address that's entered upon the user entering in an address, what are the mechanisms that might be in place for somebody to enter in a false address? So if they reside in Minnesota and they're a Minnesotan, to put in any address of a family member, friend, or a fictitious address in any other portion of the country.
Representative Acom.
Thank you, Representative Lucero. And the apps are geo-fenced, and so they will only activate within the state of Minnesota.
Representative Lucero.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I still have some more concerns, but I won't keep back and forth. I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and Representative Acom.
Okay. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Barr. Representative Barr, are you on the phone? Okay, he hung up again. That brings us to the representative from Isanti, Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Appreciate the good debate on this issue. Unfortunately, this bill is dead. Pass, don't pass, doesn't matter today. The Senate has already vocally said a couple of times that they're not going to pass their bill and send this into conference committee. Doesn't mean the issue is dead for the session. It just means that this as a vehicle isn't the way that we're going to get sports betting done this year. So people know that, but it's certainly fine to talk about it here on the House floor. I woke up this morning, and of course this issue doesn't come up on the House floor every day, and newer members of the caucuses have been asking, gosh, I didn't know if this was an important bill or not, and yesterday we had a liquor omnibus bill on the House floor. I think a liquor omnibus bill comes up about every 5 years. A gambling bill comes up once in about 10 years. So these are important bills. They're not issues that come up very often. I, just like you, I'm sure, have been getting emails from constituents asking me to support this. I certainly appreciate having that input. But as much as we've been thinking about this issue in the last day or two, and it's been on my mind, of course, as well, I woke up this morning and was reading an email from a constituent, and I opened it up. And it was the same kind of form email. This is going to be a funny story, so I know you don't normally pay attention, but you probably will want to on this one. And I do promise that I will protect the anonymity of the person who sent me the email and not mention them by name. But this email, same form email, sports betting would be a win. I've probably gotten a couple dozen of these maybe. over the last couple of weeks. Dear Representative Dowd, it's time to legalize sports betting in Minnesota. It's supported by everyone I talk to, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom, it gives the name and the email address and the phone number of the person that sent it. It's from my mom. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. My mom sent me this form email, 9:31 this morning. And the funny thing is, I know that my mom is not a proponent of, and like I said, to protect her anonymity, I won't use her name on the House floor. But she is not someone who has been in a casino probably in 50 years. And has never talked to me about gambling. In fact, not all of these stories about gambling are funny. She has a cousin who some years ago, and I have talked about this on the House floor in the past, and it's why I take issues about gambling very seriously. But she has a cousin who took her own life because she had an addiction to gambling. And she didn't know how to solve the problem. So as much fun as we have with these issues, and as much as we like to participate in this activity and we want to legalize it for people, and I do support that, I will eventually vote for a bill that legalizes sports betting here. But I want to make sure we think about the other side of it too, because it does affect people. So anyways, back to the funny part of the story. I apologize. So my mom sends me this email, this form email, and because I know my mom doesn't support sports betting and wouldn't send me this email, I sent her a text message. I screenshot the picture of the email, and I texted her and I said, "Did you fill out something online supporting sports betting?" And she said, "Yes." It didn't give me an option to say no. And I thought, okay, well. The good news is, if I end up in some prison in Mexico and I need her to wire me money overnight, I guarantee you she will do it. She's a good-hearted woman, and she does struggle sometimes with understanding what exactly is relevant online. But those things are also a serious issue. She said, yes, it didn't give me a no option. And I replied to her and I said, well, how did you get there? And she said, simply, this is all she said back to me: Facebook free samples for kitchen products. So my mom is online thinking she's getting free samples for kitchen products and somehow generates an email to me, her son, asking me to vote for sports betting. So pay attention to these emails you get and check with people and see if they're actually genuine. It's not the only one. I told this story in caucus, and I just got a text message from one of my members who also checked with a friend of hers, and this was at 4:10 p.m. today. This friend emailed her back and said, "This is scary!" I did not send that email to you. I support you, and I am not a gambler in the sense of the word. I would never send an email concerning betting. How the heck did this happen? I wonder who else received emails supposedly from me saying things I don't believe. Thank you for answering, so I realize this is happening. And if you go to those emails and hit reply, those emails don't go to the person. Now, they do say the email address and the address of the person that generated it. And I don't know where these folks that are generating the emails get their lists of people and how they get their authorization. But please remember that just because you got an email from somebody, it doesn't mean they necessarily support sports betting. Doesn't necessarily mean that I don't support it. But this is a good lesson for those of us that serve in the legislature. There's a lot of people outside the building that want to influence us in one way or another. And sometimes this stuff isn't always as accurate as we might think that it is. And I am not going to vote for the bill today. I do support ultimately a sports betting bill, but I think it needs to be a balanced bill that also does take into account the problems that can be created with addiction to this sort of activity. And I know the folks that are participating in this are for the most part really also concerned about that and want to make sure that we're providing the resources necessary for people that do need help, because that does affect people. And I know I've shared that story about my my cousin or my aunt on the House floor before. But just as a reminder, it is a serious thing and it does impact people. So I wanted to share that story. I got a good chuckle out of it this morning when I got the email from my mom, because I thought, of all people, is my mom really online generating emails to me about betting for sports betting? So apparently, Representative Stevenson, you've got quite an advocate in my family for your bill. So unfortunately, not even my mother could convince me to vote for this bill, but nice try. And hopefully, even though this bill is going to be a dead end because it's not going to go into conference committee, this is an issue that we do need to keep talking about and keep working on. Is there time yet to do it this session? I don't know. The Senate leader has said that the clock is ticking and time may be running out. But we can keep talking about it. I do want to thank Representative Franson for her words on the House floor here just a few minutes ago about all of the things that we are not doing right now to help Minnesotans, while we are worrying about a bill that really is a dead end and doesn't have a path here this session. So here we are debating sports betting when folks are suffering from the highest inflation in decades. They can't afford their groceries. They have the highest gas prices in a decade at least, and they can't afford to fill their gas tanks. Inflation's at an all-time high. Folks are suffering from that economy, and we're worried about a sports betting bill, while the state sits on the largest surplus in state history, and we have yet to act on real tax reform for Minnesotans. The targets that Democrats have put forward in this chamber spend $21 of increased government spending for every dollar of tax relief back to Minnesotans, at a time when we're in the second year of the biennium and we have the largest surplus in state history, and we just fully funded our state budget last year. And Democrats want to spend $21 of new spending with that surplus for every dollar of tax relief. And Minnesotans need the help right now, and Democrats are not helping them. They're debating a bill on the House floor that is a dead end. It's not going into conference committee. This will not become law through this avenue this year. And it appears to be a waste of time. So while Minnesotans are suffering and wondering why this legislature is not doing anything to help them, I want to thank Mary Franson for really talking about the fact that those are the things we should be focused on right now. And while the clock is ticking and Rome is burning, Democrats in the Minnesota House are worried about these sorts of things to send some message when we should be focused on the high gas prices and the high inflation and helping Minnesotans who are suffering, who can't afford those essentials. So I'm going to vote no against this bill, and I'm going to keep talking along with Representative Franson about those important things and how Minnesotans actually need us to do our jobs right now. So thank you.
The representative from Dakota, Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you. I'll be voting green on today's bill. I want to thank those members who have contributed their time and effort into studying these issues and understanding it. Members, it is important to point out that sports gambling, while it may seem provocative on the House floor today, is actually not that controversial. In fact, the vast majority of states in the country have already enacted sports gambling. Those states that have passed it, there is no serious effort to retract it. There is no effort to repeal those initiatives across our country. As Representative Stevenson mentioned earlier, in the state of Minnesota, we are surrounded by states. Wisconsin, Iowa, both Dakotas, as well as the country of Canada, where sports gambling is legal. We are an island. And it has been 4 years since we've enacted, since the Supreme Court overturned this. Now, I do respect the fact that people have correctly highlighted some of the flaws that are in this bill. And those statements are correct. There are areas of this bill that need improvement. And the author is willing to take your suggestions. I would encourage you to go to him and suggest those changes. But members, today we do not have an option of perfection. You have a green vote and you have a red vote. There isn't, I don't know, let me think about it, maybe, kind of, sort of. None of those options exist. What you have today is a clear choice of green or red. If you vote green, you continue the process going forward to give us an opportunity to reach a bipartisan, bicameral solution on sports gambling, something the vast majority of Minnesotans want. Or you can vote red and you can kill the bill. Let's be very clear. Of all the issues that have been raised today, killing the bill does nothing to solve those problems.
Does nothing. All it does is perpetuate the black market that exists. It continues the status quo where Minnesota consumers who are engaging in illicit sports gambling have no consumer protections from the black market. They have no consumer protections from offshore sports books. And in fact, it just inconveniences people to get in their car and drive to neighboring states. That's not the things that we need in Minnesota. So today, I would ask you to vote green, not because you support 90% or 100% of the bill, but because by voting red, you are killing this legislation for the session. I know we have to work bicamerally. I know we have to get the Senate to move forward on this, but that's what I'm asking you to do today. Please vote green, and let's represent Minnesota and move forward on this bill. 4 years is too long. Let's not wait another 4. Members, please vote green.
To the author of the bill, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, for great discussion today. I think that we have been rightly focused today on the issue of problem gaming and the impact that it has on our communities, because it's important. And I think that we need to be honest about the fact that problem gaming is very real, and it will be real regardless of whether this bill passes or does not pass. But it will be worse if we keep gaming in the shadows. It will be worse if people hide in their basements and do whatever else, trying to keep a secret of what they are doing. That makes addiction worse. Stigma makes addiction worse. Openness, education, treatment, and love make addiction better. What this bill does is it takes, as Representative Garofalo ably said, a black market activity and moves it into the legitimate market. And in doing so, we give options for people struggling with their addiction. We provide more resources than any state in the country, anywhere else, to treat problem gaming. There has literally been, every time people come with me with a suggestion how we could make this bill better on problem gaming, I take it because I'm very concerned about it. It's an important issue, and I want to do right by it. This is an important issue. Is it the most important issue we're addressing this session? Certainly not, but we are still working. I want to remind members, I was in conference committees earlier today on other issues. We'll continue to work. We'll continue to address those issues. Ultimately, this is an issue whose time has come. Public polling suggests that 64% of Minnesotans want sports betting to be legal against only 17% who are opposed. That's a pretty broad spread in a world where you don't see it these days. Usually public opinion is pretty polarized these days, but there's a lot of consensus around this issue. Minnesotans want us to have this conversation. They want this to be legal. This is a step in the right direction. Please vote green.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Members, this is your chance to vote. Please vote. Will the clerk please call the names of the members who have not voted yet?
Agbaje.
Agbaje votes aye.
Agbaje, aye. Barr.
Barr, aye.
Barr, aye. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, aye.
Becker Finn, aye. Bowe.
Bowe votes no.
Bowe, no. Edelson. Edelson.
Edelson, aye.
Edelson, aye. Frankie. Frankie. Frederick.
Frederick, aye.
Frederick, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson J.
Hanson J, aye.
Hanson J, aye. Hassan. Hassan. Houseman.
Houseman, no.
Houseman, no. Hollins.
Hollins, aye.
Hollins, aye. Jurgens. Jurgens. Keeler. Keeler. Lucero.
Lucero, no.
Lucero, no. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald, no. Miller.
Miller, no.
Miller, no. Moran.
Aye.
Moran, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Scott.
Scott, no.
Scott, no. Thompson.
Thompson, aye.
Thompson, aye. Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie. Speaker Hortman.
Speaker Hortman, aye.
Speaker Hortman, aye. Frankie. Frankie. Hassan. Hassan. Jurgens. Jurgens, aye. Keeler. Keeler. Zhang Jie. Zhang Jie. Frankie, aye. Lee. Lee, aye.
The clerk will close the roll.
So that's 70. 70? So 70 with Lee.
You didn't get, okay, got it.
Oh, we did, but he's left, yeah. So you have to say 70. The nays.
Thank you.
There being 70 ayes and 57 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.